so much, you may even get tired of winning. And you'll say, please, please, it's too much winning. We can't take it anymore. Mr. President, it's too much. And I'll say, no, it isn't. We have to keep winning. We have to win more. We're going to win more.
Yeah. I'm just kidding. And oh my goodness. Of course, the camera isn't working. See, this is what happens when I come in on my day off. I need to switch it to this and then switch it back. I had to restart the computer. There we go. Had to restart the computer, and of course, I always forget that the camera turns off. Here on the day off, yes, I decided, you know what? There was a couple of particular thoughts that I came upon. One was an article that I was reminded of, and the other one, actually two articles, but one article primarily that I was reminded of, and then the other one is a thread that was just posted by John Conrad, and I was like, I have to read this. I have so many things I want to say about this right now. This is that, like, everyone needs to know about this. So we are coming in on the day off to stream, and also I've missed a lot of days this month, so it's a good opportunity to try to make a little extra money. Which reminds me, please do tip your streamer. The link is pinned in the chat over on Kick. Come join us on Kick if you're watching somewhere else. I don't usually go live this early, but I'm actually trying to get to the point where I can go live earlier than this even. But there's a number of different things, different variables that have to be managed around to make that happen. So, but hopefully we're gonna get back to, I'll just say it, early afternoon. Early afternoon is where I'm trying to be. So little tease, I guess, was we started. What is it, 7 o'clock? Desperately trying to pull it out of the late night. I don't want to do a late night stream. So Mr. Buttpoop said I specifically put off reading that article because I had a feeling you'd lave about it. Yeah, well, Patriot, Mr. Buttpoop, you're great, sir. Shout out to PA Ingalls Respecter, resubscribing over on Kick, and I got a hair in my mouth. That's unpleasant. Yeah, this probably isn't going to be a super long lab because I will have to leave to go pick my sister up from work. And then we're doing the King Pilled Discord voice chat tonight. So this will be, they'll do the stream, probably be about 2 hours or so. And then we'll take a brief little interlude, and then I'll be jumping onto the voice chat over in the King Pilled Discord. And we will be talking. So if you'd like to join us for that, go to kingpill.com and sign up now. Also, go to form.kingpill.com and make sure you get your name on the list for the random drawing that we will do. There's no purchase necessary, but hey, there we go, Magoo! Nigga, Heil Hitler to you!
Thank you for the early Libe.
Yes, indeed, Magoo. You're welcome. I like this. I like doing an earlier Libe. Mrs. Kingpilled says in the chat, I'm hoping to be asleep in the next hour, so get on the nice list early or remain on the naughty list until tomorrow. Mrs. Kingpilled is keeping track. The people who support the show, they get put onto the nice list. And her naughty list is very, very large. It's an exclusive club to get onto the nice list. So you're going to have to... She's knocking out here shortly and going to bed early. She's a tired woman. She has her hands full. She has Eastwood, and she has me. And she is never without things to do. So reward her by supporting the show early on in the stream. Tips.kingpill.com. What was I going to say? Oh, reminder also that there is that's the $88 alert. There's the base boosted Erica is the $14.88 alert, and then there's a $47 alert as well. The $47 one doesn't get as much love, so I just wanted to make sure you guys remembered that. Okay, real quick though, at the very beginning, just got to give a shout out to our boy Fraser Payne. Fraser Payne is probably one of the most talented AI video creators right now. This is incredible. You may know Fraser Payne is the secret account of our vice president who was robbed in the Grok video making challenge that X did. Our boy Mine Got Niles here was robbed, deprived of $1 million.
If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you, Borp, for the gifted sub. Welcome, Gluten Doodle. Let's say...
Keep my motherfucking president name out your mouth. Fuck, niggas. Nigga, we ride with Donald Trump over here, niggas.
Yes, he was robbed of the $1 million he was rightfully owed. And he's created himself he's got a community, the life of a chud, and he's got himself a meme coin. And here's a great application of the meme coin ethos. Like this is the role the meme coin should play, is a way that people can support a guy who's genuinely doing good work just for the love of the game, but to reward him in the ways that the mainstream institutions won't. So you can go support him. The Life of a Chud is the community on X, and @MineGotNiles is his handle. He just put this one out, and it is just incredible. There's so many layers to it. There's the technology itself, the work, the effort that's required to not just conceptualize this whole thing, but be able to prompt it and edit it, produce it together to deliver subtle little emotional cues, and it's just absolutely masterful. Brilliant work of art. This is the peak of AI video art making. Give me a whole series! The mechanics, so perfect! Just sensitive young men, after all. There's one part here that I want to highlight that stood out to me. But something came in. I muted alerts while that was playing. I didn't want something to interrupt it, but something interrupted it.
Here comes the money.
Howie Snowden, the Patriot.
Here comes the money.
Dollar, 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 dollar. Ching, ching, bling, bling, cut the chatter. You ain't talking money, then you're talking no matter.
Staying on the nice list.
Alpha male alert. Thank you, Howie Snowden. You are a patriot, sir. Mrs. Kingpilled, make sure that you've got Howie on the nice list. Yeah, there you go. Confirmation. Thank you, sir. You are one of the all-time highest supporters of the show. There's a group of about five guys who are just I could never express just how indebted I am to you guys for all of your support. You're tremendous. And Howie is among that elite tier. Okay, this just little touch right here. I cannot even fathom how it's possible to to prompt such like that you get this natural. Watch when his arms drop. He's standing here, his arms are reaching up, and then when they drop, they don't just like drop and hang by his sides. There's something about the way they drop and sort of swing back where you could it's not someone pretending to just go like that like crestfallen experience. It's someone who's like genuinely been so rocked that they're kind of losing control of their motor skills just a little bit. Watch this. It's incredible. How do you make that happen? Like if his hands just dropped straight to his sides, it would have looked plenty natural. But they dropped and swung. His whole body just gave out in dejection. This is remarkable work. And as as Jason Miranchuk said, and to imagine the Israelis couldn't make AI Bibi with the right number of fingers and ear holes. Yeah, that's one of my. I don't really care that much. It would sure be interesting if Bibi got knocked off. It would change things substantially. But it's whatever. To a certain extent, some of these guys are. They've projected themselves out into the world so forcefully that they could even not be there for a while, and it would be like there is a digital representation of their persona there. So there's like Bibi the man, and then there's Bibi the phenomenon. And people will navigate and move around Bibi and account for Bibi and a lot for Bibi, even if they're not actively seeing him. So, you know, it could be that he could be a Gitmo, he could be dead, he could be in Siberia. Literally anything would be conceivable to me right now. And he could be just totally fine and whatever. But just like recreational belief, it's really fun to like speculate and fantasize about some of these other options. Like, you know, what if like someone from the Russian mob or something went down and grabbed him and he's got electrodes attached to his nipples somewhere in Siberia. Anyways, okay, let's get into the show here. Thank you guys for your support. And if you're watching on any other platform right now, you should go over to Kick. You should go watch on Kick and join the chat there. He got a lake house next to Hitler. Yeah. Good to see you, Tooz McGee. That is. I'm pretty sure Tooz McGee, you are our. I won't say your name in case you don't want it said. But I'm pretty sure I know who you are. Craig Fuller over at Freight Alley says, if you wanted to reindustrialize the U.S. while wiping out global manufacturing, this is the way to make that happen. Well, what's he referring to? Trump has floated the idea of the U.S. abandoning the Strait of Hormuz. Trump says, I wonder what would happen if we finished off what's left of the Iranian terror state and let the countries that use it, we don't, be responsible for the so-called strait. That would get some of our non-responsive allies in gear and fast. Now, isn't that an interesting thing to say? Almost as if Trump is almost implying here that the U.S. controls the future of the Strait of Hormuz. The U.S. has been tasked with maintaining the Strait of Hormuz through activity or inactivity. They've been tasked with the Strait of Hormuz must be held in static, exactly as it is. No variables can change. It must be exactly like this, and it's implicitly understood that the United States is ultimately on the hook for maintaining that status or not threatening that status. And now the predominant narrative here is, oh, Trump thought he could bomb them for a couple of days and then it would all be over, and now he's desperately scrambling, trying to come up with an alternative plan. And the United States can't get this done, so he's having to try to guilt his NATO allies into stepping in and cleaning up his mess. Like this is the narrative. Which, you note, this draws on this long-standing regime media tradition of characterizing him as this impulsive, totally like unprincipled, has no guiding North Star morally, is just kind of haphazardly, sporadically doing things. This is the way he's been characterized most, generously since he showed up on the scene a little over a decade ago. Now, I'm going to read you guys a couple of some things here a little later, the back end of this, about just how long he has been focused on this, what I would say this broad issue. And he is the exact opposite. There is no actual evidence. There's no actual, the evidence is overwhelmingly in favor of him being a very well, a long-thinking individual. He's whatever the opposite is of sporadic and chaotic and unprincipled, and he's actually extremely simple. He has a few specific, guiding North Stars. I guess you can't have more than one North Star, but you know what I mean. He has some guiding principles that he operates, and they're all operative. And he just functions along these levels and just does the same thing over and 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 over again. And everyone says it has to be so much more than it actually is. No, it really is just as simple as the man is a master negotiator. He believes everything all the world's problems can be solved through negotiation. And he has a couple of specific matters that dominate his attention. And he just goes back to them over and over and over and over and over again. So I'm going to read a couple of things later here. These are old articles. One of them is from 1984. And then one of them is from 2017, talking about Donald Trump and his concern about nuclear non-proliferation. Before that, though, there's a kind of a two-parter here. So I'm going to play a video as a setup. And the video is kind of long. It's 17 minutes, I think. 17? What did he mean by this? 17 minutes long. And I don't have a ton to add to it necessarily, but I think it's really important context to have regarding the USS Tripoli. We're going to talk about the Strait of Hormuz and why the Strait of Hormuz is quote-unquote closed, what interests are ensuring that it stay closed versus trying to get it open, and framing this within the rest of the context of all the actions that Trump has taken on trade and foreign policy and domestic policy, reindustrialization, and shipbuilding. There's for the people who are willing to, just be serious for a little bit and do some reading, there is so much evidence about these overarching, comprehensive points of view that are being brought to bear by significant members of the administration toward the complete restructuring of American supply chains, American financial networks, American industrial capacity. And all of these fit together. This isn't some you're going and you're finding some obscure post. No, this is literally just reading the documentation that they provide to us. Looking at who's being hired where. And shipbuilding, which is an extremely important part of an empire, the ability to project power over the seas, and ties in very closely with national defense and trade and economic productivity. All of these things are all meshed together. And this is a top priority for the administration. So this ought to inform, in order to get sufficient buy-in, sufficient political capital to undertake something like this campaign against Iran, you have to bring in so many diverging interests and find a point at which they can all connect and collide together. You can't just have one or two lobby groups that you just sort of work with and you're just blindly pressing forward, pursuing your own agenda, and everyone is like, hey, stop, you can't do this. They're talking corporate interests, banking interests, trade unions. There's so many different political interests that have to come together, that have to align together to do something like a sustained military campaign against Iran. And everyone wants to cram this straight into the Zionist frame, as if the Zionist frame is the only one that matters, as if these are the only two competing positions. These are the only two competing factions, is Zionist interests and anti-Zionist interests. This is gay. This is extremely gay. This has all the hallmarks of every single other dialectic-driven psyop. This is just a new version of like libertarians versus communists. This is a gay framing of the world. There are a lot of different interests. And one that consistently gets ignored is the imperial structure. We're going from there was an era defined by the Roman Empire. Then there's an era defined by the British Empire. And there are other empires at the time that were moving in and around and different factions shifting and power structures and all that sort of thing. But there is an era that has been predominantly defined, particularly in the United States, by the British Empire. Now we're going through this imperial waning. Everyone can sense it's like there's an empire collapsing. And everyone says, oh, it's the American empire that's collapsing. But America hasn't even existed as a state, much less as an empire, for we're coming up on our 250th birthday. And there was state apparatuses, there was political structures that pre-existed that, but you couldn't even call America an aspiring empire until probably at least the 19th century, if not into the 20th. There's stuff that was sort of starting to begin between the like in the 1840s, 1850s, but this was still like we don't know what it's like to have the vast majority of the continent be just a thing that's kind of unknown, that's just kind of out there. Unsettled, undiscovered, unpopulated. The closest analog that we would have to this today would be space. Something in space, where it's just sort of like this vagueness that's out there. So America hadn't even taken control over its own continent until just within the last, century and a half or so. So at the very least, America is, on a historical frame, America is a fledgling nation. Much less an empire. So, I think there's this world historic trajectory that the overemphasis on Zionism really misses. Zionism is like a main character in the imperial story. But the story itself has a structure that is changing. And it'll bear some resemblance to the old one, but it's going to be substantially new and different. So, bringing this back down to earth, or to the seas, I suppose. The assumption right now is, if I could just kind of summarize it, it's Israel lied the United States into war, tricked Trump, trapped him into this no-win situation where he either has to back down and admit he just made everything worse and didn't get anything out of it and returns Iran to whatever it was before, now degraded and victorious. Or he has to commit to a full-scale ground invasion. It's forever wars all over again. And no matter what, he has completely nuked his credibility. He's backed into a corner, and he's desperate for allies to come in and bail him out. And the Strait of Hormuz is central to this whole argument because so much of global shipping is affected by whether or not the strait is open. Energy prices all around the world. Critical minerals around the world. Their supply is substantially affected if the Strait of Hormuz traffic is disrupted. So the way this is being framed by the libertarians, the neocons, the regime media, the ideological anti-Zionists, the way that they're framing this is Iran has stood up to Trump and has locked down the Strait of Hormuz, and now Trump's over a barrel, and he doesn't know what to do. He can't get out of this without losing face or begging allies to come bail him out. But this perspective misses a whole lot of context. And I think you can only arrive at it if you're stuck in this rigid Zionist versus anti-Zionist frame, where those are the only perspectives that are permitted, so everything has to be filtered through that lens. I think that requires ignoring a tremendous amount of evidence, namely that Trump, if Israel didn't exist, Trump would have interests in the Strait of Hormuz. Trump would want to exercise control over the Strait of Hormuz. Why? Because who is downstream from the Strait of Hormuz? It's not the United States. It's only the United States to the extent that the United States is affected by the global economy. But it's a much more proximal threat to the Gulf states, Europe, China, Japan, other American allies. The United States doesn't get directly affected by the strait not being opened, assuming the strait is closed again. Other countries get affected by it much more substantially, much more quickly. So it's like a slow burn effect to the United States, whereas it's like instant crisis mode for everyone else. That's why the entire regime press, the internationalist perspective, is all honed in on this as this is the big thing. This is why Iran has Trump over the barrel. But if you assume that Trump recognizes the value of the Strait of Hormuz, given that he's talked about it for 40 plus years, he would want to position himself. This wouldn't be like, oh, he didn't know about the Strait of Hormuz and he bumbled into this and now all of a sudden they got him by the short hairs with the really obvious move that everyone was talking about. No, the way you ought to be perceiving these events is that one of Trump's primary motivations is to control the Strait of Hormuz directly. The Strait of Hormuz is the toll booth, and he wants to own the toll booth. Because if you own the toll booth, then everyone downstream from the toll booth has to pay rent to you. The United States is already ultimately on the hook for whatever happens with the Strait of Hormuz. So he's saying, if that's already the case, we're not going to do this whole like international community sort of like dance around it thing. No, the United States controls the Strait of Hormuz. You guys pay us to use it. And in return for that, we'll ensure that it stays open, no matter what. This is the sort of behavior that an ascendant empire engages in. Taking control of strategic choke points and holding them. And I think once you begin viewing the Strait of Hormuz shutdown as something that was an explicit goal of the operation, or at the very least, a contingency that was directly planned for as the expected next option. Now, one other thing I want to say is, again, if you recognize there's multiple different elements at play here, all these different factions that have to buy in to make something like this happen, then that means that the way the path is going to move forward is going to have to satisfy as many different elements of that faction as possible for as long as possible. But eventually, more and more factions are going to start falling off of it. So you're trying to sustain this coalition to press to another point where you can then hold that point. So yes, Israel definitely has, especially the Netanyahu function of Israel, definitely has their own reasons for wanting Iran taken out. There's a long list of those, and everyone knows about. This is the stuff that everyone knows now. This isn't secret, esoteric knowledge. This is the thing everyone knows. What people don't know, what people are not talking about, is the direct interests that Donald Trump would have in controlling the Strait of Hormuz and intentionally setting up a structure whereby he could take control of the Strait of Hormuz and use it to whip the rest of the European nations into shape. This has been a consistent declaration of his entire administration. Read the national security strategy. Read the different treasury statements that Scott Bessent has made. Every single one of them has said that Europe is threatening to fall out of ally status. And that in order for the European nations to continue to be treated as allies and granted the benefits of being allies, which is something the United States wants, to the extent that that continues to be the case, they're going to need to play ball. They're going to need to play ball in the shipping and manufacturing and military and monetary, financial policy. They need to be aligned on all of these things. If you're going to be under our security umbrella, you're going to play by our rules, or we will push you outside the security umbrella. Because you'll break before we will. That's what his whole administration has been defined by. So now you have all the European, British, Anglicist press all running with this same narrative, which is, oh, Trump is committing suicide. Trump is shooting himself in the foot. Trump is so impulsive. He has no idea what he's doing. He is the big orange retard that watches the Gorilla Channel. But meanwhile, his entire administration has been very obviously signaling this direction for a long time. So, the USS Tripoli is headed to the Strait of Hormuz. They're not hurrying. They're just making their way there. Expected to be there within the next couple of weeks, right along the same timeline as the administration has operated with. To the extent that they have given a timeline, they've been vague because there's like operational reasons for ambiguity. But the timeline they've given is, you know, they're expecting it to be basically done by, what the hell just happened? Basically done after about 4 or 5 weeks. That was the thing that Trump initially said. He said he's talking about it in the past tense now, and he's moved on to other things. He's talking about like issuing executive orders on housing, and he's yelling about Tina Peters today, and talking about the SAVE Act, and like he's moved on. This is at a state now where he sees himself as in the driver's seat there. So the USS Tripoli is being sent over there, and with a contingent of 2,500 Marines. And there's lots of speculation about what this might be about. Seth Levy, The Reckoning on Twitter, he's been talking about the USS Tripoli for a while, and I read you guys a thread that he did just recently going back and forth with Grok talking about its relevance to Karg Island specifically. So here's a video. Now it's obviously AI voiceover, and it's from a channel called Navy Decoded. So take all this for just a grain of salt, but we're starting with this premise that Trump wants to control the Strait of Hormuz. That's an intention of his, and that he's all of this focus on NATO and the NATO allies and making fun of the Brits and the French and castigating them over this and turning this into a NATO thing. This has been his directive all along. So we're going to assume that he's not just this kind of chaotic, impulsive guy who just sort of pulls stuff out of his ass and somehow keeps just getting lucky. No, we're going to assume there's kind of a plan. So what role would the USS Tripoli play?
On March 14th, open-source satellite trackers detected something running at high speed through the South China Sea. Not a carrier, not a destroyer, an amphibious assault ship. USS Tripoli, LHA-7. The ship most defense analysts had written off as a failed experiment. On her flight deck, up to 20 F-35B Lightning II stealth fighters. In her hull, 2,500 Marines. Destination, Hormuz. Here is why that is strange. We broke 90% of Iran's military equation. 60 warships sit on the bottom of the Gulf.
Pale Morning Dude says, my brother's sailing probably to the Strait tomorrow. Very interesting. Very interesting. What branch? Where's he coming from? Prayers up for him.
The missile factories that fed Hormuz its teeth are rubble. Drone production lines, silent. 2 carrier strike groups hold the perimeter from opposite oceans. Lincoln commands the Arabian Sea, Ford locks down the Red Sea. A third carrier, the Bush, is still crossing the Atlantic, days away. From the outside, the siege looks complete, but Hormuz is still closed. So look at what complete actually means when you run the numbers. More than 150 tankers sit anchored outside the strait, hemorrhaging fuel costs while they wait. Brent crude holds above $100 a barrel because the market prices certainty, and right now, certainty does not exist. The remaining 10% of Iran's capability, mines seeded across the seabed, mobile launchers buried inside mountain tunnels, fast attack craft staged in coastal coves, is enough to deny a 6 nautical mile shipping corridor. And here is the brutal arithmetic that keeps every escort commander awake.
So, the way that the United States has conducted this campaign has been undertaken such that it would produce an outcome where the direct assets that control, quote unquote, control the Strait of Hormuz, the Iranian assets that control the Strait of Hormuz, get completely cut off and broken apart from the main power structure. So you degrade their ability to their intelligence coverage. You ensure that they're the only things being focused on. There's no distractions elsewhere. And you cut off their supply routes. And you start waiting them out. That's the situation that they have created. And anybody who you described this course of action to prior to it being undertaken would have told you, even a layman that you kind of gave the general concept to, would have said, oh yeah, that's going to result in a situation where you have the direct military assets that control the Strait of Hormuz, but they're kind of isolated and cut off from everything else. And a waiting game is going to hurt them more than it hurts the United States. So that's the situation that has been created. This is the situation where supposedly now Iran has Trump by the short hairs. And they're like, oh, we're just going to wait him out. But this is the situation they created intentionally for themselves.
You do not need to sink a convoy to close a strait. You need to sink one tanker, one burning hull in that corridor, and no insurer on Earth will write the next policy. The strait does not close by force, it closes by fear, and fear only needs one example. That is the paradox at the center of this war. The most powerful navy in human history solved 90% of the problem, but escort requires 100, and the distance between 90 and 100 is a supertanker on fire. Why is the Pentagon sending a ship most analysts dismissed to solve the problem 2 supercarriers could not? What can 2,500 Marines do that 50,000 sailors cannot? If you are proud of the men and women operating these machines, subscribe to Navy Decoded. We do not sell headlines, we solve equations. To answer that, we need to understand the weapon they are sending. A ship America built, hated, and nearly scrapped. Because the story of why it was called a mistake is the same story that explains why it might now be the answer. When the Navy designed the America-class Flight Zero, they made a decision that drew fire from Congress, Marine Corps generals, and defense analysts alike. They removed the well deck from the blueprint entirely. The well deck is the ballast-flooded chamber at the bottom of an amphibious ship. Every assault ship since World War II has carried one. It is how you launch LCAC hovercraft, how you deploy landing craft. It is the identity of an amphibious warship. Designing an amphib without a well deck is like engineering a cargo truck and forgetting the bed. The backlash was fierce enough to force the Navy's hand. Congress mandated the well deck be restored on the third hull, USS Bougainville, LHA-8. The first two, America, LHA-6, and Tripoli, LHA-7, were written off as failed experiments. Amphibious ships that forgot how to be amphibious. The defense press agreed. The ship was a mistake. But the Navy understood something the critics did not. The space the well deck used to occupy unlocked a doubled hangar bay, expanded aviation maintenance facilities, a fully equipped surgical hospital, and jet fuel storage that previous amphib designs could never accommodate. Tripoli did not lose the ability to put Marines ashore. Tripoli changed how it puts Marines ashore, from the sea surface to the air. And in return, it gained something no other amphibious ship on Earth possesses: the ability to operate 20 F-35B Lightning II stealth fighters simultaneously. Proven off the coast of California in April 2022, 16 jets from Marine Aircraft Group 13 and 4 from VMX-1 operating from her deck in a single surge evolution. 20 F-35Bs, nearly half the air wing of a $13 billion supercarrier, on a ship that costs $3.5 billion. The ship they called a mistake turned out to be the most dangerous pocket carrier afloat. Now here is why that mistake is exactly right for Hormuz. We explained in a previous video why carriers refused to enter the Persian Gulf. That 540 nautical mile bathtub Iran spent 40 years turning into a kill box. 100,000 tons of irreplaceable steel is too valuable to risk inside it. Tripoli displaces 44,000 tons. She is not irreplaceable the way Ford or Lincoln are. In the Pentagon's risk calculus, losing Tripoli is painful. Losing a carrier is catastrophic. Tripoli is expendable enough to get close, and powerful enough to change the equation. And she brings something no carrier possesses: 2,500 Marines distributed across 5 ships. The 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit out of Okinawa, the only continuously forward-deployed MEU on the planet. They just completed Exercise Iron Fist 26 with the Japanese Self-Defense Force, practicing island seizure, electronic warfare, and rapid amphibious assault from February 23rd through March 9th, 2 weeks before Hormuz called.
Oh, what's that? They were practicing exactly this? Huh.
Escorting the Tripoli, the E.E. Jais cruiser Robert Smalls, CG-62, the Arleigh Burke destroyer Rafael Peralta, DDG-115, and 2 San Antonio-class LPDs, New Orleans and San Diego, carrying the Marines and their equipment. There is a cost. Pulling Tripoli from Japan strips the Indo-Pacific of its only amphibious rapid reaction force. That is not a light decision. The Pentagon is withdrawing assets from one theater to solve another, and that tells you exactly how important Hormuz is to America right now. The ship they called a mistake is now running at high speed through...
Wait. So their actions that they've clearly planned for indicate that the Strait of Hormuz is extremely important to them. And yet we're supposed to believe that it's something that snuck up on them. They had no idea this was going to happen. They had no idea they were going to find themselves in this position. Even though all the things that they have indicated that that's the thing they're isolating for.
Through the South China Sea toward the narrowest strait on Earth, and it carries something nobody has brought to Hormuz before. Not more missiles, but an entirely new dimension, the ground. Iran built beach defenses to stop landing craft from the sea. Tripoli has no landing craft. Its Marines come from the sky.
Homeless Nomad says, it's almost like Hormuz is the current major global trade artery the city is pivoting to sit on top of and control. You're kidding! No way! You mean that the city of London treats actual London as if it's disposable, can be done away with at any point. And they're undertaking all these different actions that indicate perhaps they want to relocate. They've moved in the past. They haven't been in London forever. Now they're looking for a new home. And they've been getting kicked out in Russia, and they've been getting kicked out in China, and now they're starting to get kicked out in the United States. So where is all their what's their focus on? Their focus is on arbitraging commodities and controlling global shipping and setting up toll booths everywhere. That's their modus operandi. This was the lifeblood of the British Empire. Whether it was British controlled or French controlled or German controlled or Jewish controlled, whatever, it was called the British Empire, and that was its lifeblood. They have been angling to relocate themselves in like Dubai. That's where they're trying to set up their new base of operations. And everything Trump has been doing should be properly understood as him being the front man of the people who are competing against the City of London's attempt to do this. They're cornering them. This is the high stakes game. This is the meta game that's happening, where you're beginning to change the rules of the game itself, not just the players in it. Yes, it's all about the flow. And the Zionist story is a subset of this, because Zionism is one of the most powerful agencies, you might say, of the old regime. And it's trying to port itself into the new regime. It's trying to carry itself, it's like a stowaway, trying to carry itself along as far as it can. So it's trying to align incentives as much as possible. But it's clearly not the most dominant driving force, and it's the one that's under the most fire right now.
Nobody knows exactly how CENTCOM will employ Tripoli. The orders are classified, and any channel that claims otherwise is guessing. But the capability is not classified, and Tripoli introduces 3 capabilities that did not exist at Hormuz before she sailed. Each one solves a piece of the 10% problem the carriers left behind. The problem: Lincoln and Ford operate in the open ocean outside the Persian Gulf, too valuable to risk inside the bathtub. That means no persistent air cover inside the strait. A combat air patrol launched from Lincoln at 500 nautical miles has to fly for over an hour just to reach the shipping lanes. Time on station is measured in minutes before the jets need to turn back for fuel. That gap, the gap between takeoff and presence, is where Iranian drones find tankers. Tripoli solves this with physics. At 44,000 tons and $3.5 billion, she is expendable enough in the risk calculus to operate close to Hormuz. Her F-35Bs are Stüvel, short takeoff, vertical landing. No catapults needed. They launch from an 844-foot deck. Operating at 100 nautical miles instead of 500 changes one variable that changes everything: time on station. Run the math. An F-35B launching from Lincoln at 500 nautical miles cruises at roughly 450 knots. That is over an hour of transit each way, 2 hours of fuel burned just getting to the fight and back. On a standard load, that leaves maybe 40 minutes of actual patrol time over the shipping lanes. 3 sorties per day per jet, and you still have gaps measured in hours. Now, run the same math from Tripoli at 100 miles. 13 minutes each way. Time on station triples. Gap between patrols shrinks to minutes instead of hours. And those minutes are the difference between an Iranian Mohajer-6 drone finding a tanker or an F-35B finding the drone first. Tripoli's passive sensors detect surveillance drones before those drones transmit targeting coordinates back to shore launchers. Kill the drone, and you break the kill chain. We explained how that chain works in the previous video. Tripoli is the tool that severs it at the source. Tripoli solves the sky, but the strait has 3 dimensions, and 2 of them are still Iran's. 3 fortified islands sit directly inside the shipping corridor, and no amount of air patrol neutralizes a missile launcher buried in reinforced concrete. Iran controls Abu Musa, Greater Tumb, and Lesser Tumb, seized in 1971. Iran fortified them with anti-ship missile batteries, coastal radar, artillery positions, and IRGC garrisons. They are unsinkable aircraft carriers, fixed platforms that can launch ordnance into the shipping lanes at point-blank range. Even after Epic Fury's air campaign, any surviving capability on those islands threatens every vessel transiting the corridor. This is the scenario Tripoli was optimized for, and this is where removing the well deck becomes an advantage, not a liability.
Okay, now just for a little bit of visual context here. The current state of things is, here is the strait right here. So you've got Red Sea over here, and then you've got the Arabian Sea out here, and then inside here, Persian Gulf. This up here is Karg Island. So this is where like 80 or 90% of their oil production flows through Karg Island, which is the lifeblood of the current regime. That's their economic power. It comes through there. Right now, what they're doing is there's this island right here called Keshem. The strikes that they did a couple of days ago destroyed all of the military infrastructure up here on Karg Island. Now, what they're doing is the ships that are going through are coming up here, and they're coming right through this channel. Right through this channel here, so that the Iranian regime, the IRGC influences that are still around here, can visually identify the ship and let them pass through. So they come up here, they swing up through here, and then they come back out again, or vice versa. So Keshem is, and they're, that's how they're getting anything in or out, and one of the main ways that they're still making money. So, with that context, then, think of the capabilities that the Tripoli has, as he's describing them here.
A conventional amphibious ship would have to push landing craft through those same mined waters to reach the island. Tripoli does not. Marines insert by vertical envelopment, MV-22 Ospreys and CH-53 helicopters, not landing craft. They fly over the minefields instead of sailing through them. They do not touch the water Iran spent decades preparing to deny. Strike teams neutralize missile launchers and radar installations, extract whatever intelligence they can carry, and withdraw to the ship before the garrison can mount a counter. No permanent occupation, just a position that no longer shoots at tankers. The precedent exists. Operation Praying Mantis, 1988. Marines from USS Trenton boarded and destroyed Iranian oil platforms in the Persian Gulf in a single day. The 31st MEU trains for exactly this kind of operation. The honest caveat: raiding a fortified island is high risk. The current state of Iranian defenses on these islands after 2 weeks of airstrikes remains unclear. This is the lowest probability scenario, but the highest impact one, and it is now on the table. But here's what matters. The fact that
that intelligence would be extremely, extremely high value as well, and not the sort of thing that I think you would be likely to just have slipping out in normal OSINT channels. And if it was, then there would be a reason for that.
a raid is possible forces Iran to garrison those islands, and every IRGC soldier defending an island is one not defending the coastline. Raids solve islands. But the strait is not only islands, it is also 6 nautical miles of open water that no warship can safely enter. So the question becomes larger. How do you control a corridor without putting a ship inside it? The concept is called Expeditionary Advanced Base Operations, the central idea behind the Marine Corps' Force Design 2030 overhaul, the most radical restructuring of the Marines since World War II. It has never been tested in combat. Hormuz may be the first. Here is how it works. Marines fly ashore, to small islands, uninhabited coastline, or allied territory in Oman or the UAE. They establish temporary bases, HIMARS launchers, radar arrays, and forward arming and refueling points where F-35Bs and Ospreys can land, rearm, and relaunch without returning to the ship. What this creates? A kill zone spanning the entire width of the strait. HIMARS firing ATACMS at 162 nautical miles or PRSM at 270 nautical miles can engage any fast attack craft, submarine, or mine-laying vessel that enters the shipping corridor. Anti-ship firepower from shore. Simultaneously, Marines provide security for the LCS mine countermeasure ships already operating in the area. Small boats screening against fast boat harassment, F-35Bs overhead creating a protective bubble. Mine clearance still takes weeks. But Tripoli accelerates the timeline by protecting the sweepers, instead of waiting for the sweeping to finish before escort begins. That rewrites the physics of strait control. You no longer need warships inside the strait to control the strait. Marines on shore create a firepower bubble that is cheaper, harder to find, and impossible to sink. The precedent is not theoretical. HIMARS already sank Iranian warships during Epic Fury, firing from Bahrain. The 31st MEU just practiced a similar scenario during Exercise Iron Fist 26. The honest caveat: EABO doctrine is new, untested at this scale. The logistics of sustaining forward bases under Iranian counterfire remain unproven. But the physics has already been proven. HIMARS reached Iranian warships from Bahrain. The doctrine is new, the weapon is not. 3 separate scenarios, but none of them matters in isolation. Stack them together, and something emerges that Iran has never faced and has no playbook to counter. This is not about adding more.
Homeless Nomad says, or Nuclear Fatwa said, I can tell you those Marines are locked in, excited for the young blood to get some. And Homeless Nomad said, and they'll spend most of their time eating chow and watching fireworks, not like Iran can move infantry in. Right, like it's pretty high stakes, but it's like, we could just sit here and watch innovative military doctrine being deployed in a high stakes operation for the first time. And there is a conceivable clear pathway to
if you survive, you earn
total
your freedom.
victory. Thank you for resubscribing, Rufus Garbagestein.
More firepower to a problem firepower already failed to solve. It is about adding a dimension that did not exist in this theater until Tripoli sailed. For 40 years, Iran only prepared to counter threats from the sea, American warships on the horizon. Iran mastered that equation: mines below the waterline, cruise missiles from shore batteries, fast attack craft swarming in the shallow. Every dollar, every doctrine, every fortification was built to make the Gulf too expensive for ships to enter. The first 2 weeks of Epic Fury added a threat from the sky. Carrier air wings dismantled air defenses, flattened factories, crippled military infrastructure. But aircraft fly sorties and return to base. They do not stay. When Tripoli arrives, the equation gains a threat from the ground. Marines can appear on any island, any coastline, any allied position along the strait. And Marines stay.
There you go, Heinz. Heinz said, I still think we'll occupy the islands. Why not? Well, there you go.
That is the dimension Iran never built defenses against. Iran built coastal defenses against ships entering the strait, mines, shore-based missiles, fast attack swarms. Iran built air defenses against aircraft bombing from above. Those defenses are now crippled. Iran built beach defenses to stop landing craft from the sea. Tripoli has no landing craft. Its Marines come from the sky. Now look at it from Tehran's side. Defend the islands against Marine raids, and the coastline lies open to EBO. Fortify the coastline, and the islands fall. Disperse across all positions, and there is not enough left at any single point to stop anything. 3 responses.
Tehran's trilemma, it says, the unwinnable equation. So Iran can go defend the islands out here, put all their defenses, whatever they have left, they could put it on the islands and try to defend them, but then they're leaving their coastline open. So then they can line up on the coastline, but then the islands can be taken. And then they can try to do all of it while they're being completely degraded and bankrupted. Now, interestingly, yesterday, U.S. forces successfully employed multiple 5,000-pound deep penetrator munitions on hardened Iranian missile sites along Iran's coastline near the Strait of Hormuz. The Iranian anti-ship cruise missiles in these sites posed a risk to international shipping in the strait. And look at the region where they were bombing, right all along the coastline right here. Jennifer Parker says, much more productive than escorts while missiles and drones are flying. This is how you open the strait, reduce Iran's ability to target ships. Then you turn to reassurance, which is where naval escorts, patrols, strategic comms, and information sharing with the shipping community become critical. So those are back to the video now. So those are the three options, basically, that this scenario would leave Iran. And also note that Qatar just ordered, Qatar's been Iran's closest ally in the Middle East for a while now. And they just ordered all Iranian personnel out of their embassies with a 24-hour notice.
3 failures. The equation has no correct answer because Iran built defenses against ships and aircraft, not against Marines who arrived by helicopter onto positions that were never supposed to be contested. That variable has never existed in Iran's coastal defense equation, and Iran cannot build a counter for it in weeks, not when its factories are rubble and its air defenses are silent. Be honest about what this does not mean. It does not mean Hormuz opens tomorrow. Mine clearance still takes time. Escort still carries risk. But Tripoli shifts the timeline from months to weeks. And more importantly, it shifts the initiative. Before Tripoli, we waited for the equation to solve itself, grinding Iran down through naval siege while oil markets bled. After Tripoli, we solve it, actively, from multiple dimensions simultaneously. If this video changed how you look at an amphibious assault ship, subscribe to Navy Decoded. The next equation is already being built. So let us return to the paradox we started with, the 10% problem that 2 supercarriers could not solve. Carrier solved 90%, an extraordinary achievement by any standard in military history. But Hormuz does not grade on a curve. Hormuz runs on absolute certainty, and 90% is not 100. A single mine, a single missile, a single tanker burning in the corridor is all it takes to keep the insurance markets shut and the shipping lanes empty. The Navy did not solve the last 10% by sending more ships into the corridor. They sent a force designed to operate where ships cannot. On islands, on coastlines, in the sky above the strait, at ranges no carrier can sustain. The Navy refused to enter Hormuz, so they sent the Marines. Not to invade Iran, not to occupy, to fill the gap between 90 and 100%, by solving the equation from dimensions Iran never defended. Iran spent 40 years solving the equation for ships. They solved it perfectly. Mines, missiles, swarms, mountain tunnels, every defense calibrated to one variable, American steel on the waterline. They solved the right equation, but it was the wrong variable. Carriers siege from outside, Marines solve from inside. And the ship they called a mistake turned out to be the answer nobody saw coming. Dismissed.
Okay, so that is the first part. My wife is looking for the Benadryl, and she's trying to go to bed early. And I think I'm the one who took the Benadryl and put it somewhere. So I will be right back. Let me go help her find that.
Because they were quitters. They were just quitters. They would quit. They just couldn't take it. They couldn't, whatever. One of the things about loving what you do is that it's not work, and therefore you don't quit automatically. It's a lot easier not to quit. But you can never give up. Now, you have to also have flexibility, though. You can't necessarily say, I'm never giving up, and you got to be able to weave and bob. You don't have to go through a concrete wall when you can go over it or around it or under it or something. You have to have flexibility. You have to always be able to change course a little bit, maybe always with that same goal, but don't quit.
Welcome to EWBSX, where we've painstakingly curated a selection of audio experiences that are proven to boost test and delete that pesky MK Ultra programming that's been keeping you down. You're going to want to sit down for this one.
So here I am, doing everything I can, holding on to what I am, pretending I'm a Superman. I'm trying to keep the ground on my feet. It seems the world's falling down around me. The nights are all long, I'm cheap. My mind is racing faster every minute. What could I do more? Yeah, I'm really not sure. I know I'm running circles, but I can't quit. And I'm so confused about what to do. Sometimes I wanna throw it all away, controlling everything in sight. Feeling weak, I don't feel right. You're telling me I have to change, telling me to act my age. But if all that I can do is just sit and watch time go, then I'll have to say goodbye. Life's too short to watch it fly, so watch it fly. So here I am, growing older all the time, looking older all the time, feeling younger in my mind. And here I am, doing everything I can, holding on to what I am, pretending I'm a Superman. If you're listening.
Okay. Disaster averted. I got the wife properly medicated. And back to now the most important part of this stream here tonight. Why Trump is the one deliberately keeping Hormuz closed. So I said this is a candidate for most important threat on the Iranian question. It's not that the Zionism, Greater Israel angle isn't really legitimate, it's just not the only angle. Israel has their set of reasons for attacking Iran. Trump has his set of reasons. Those reasons intersect and overlap at various points, but you could take Israel completely out of the equation and Trump would still have extraordinary motivations for prosecuting this war in order to achieve his domestic agenda. That's what all of this is for, ultimately. Don't listen to anyone who is choosing to force everything into the Zionist, anti-Zionist frame, at least until they stop doing that. It's fake and gay. So, John Conrad says, let's unpack this. What if the White House has no intention of reopening the Strait of Hormuz? What if this war is really about ships and tariffs? I had a long discussion with a senior DOE official yesterday on background. I can't share any details, but it's clear everyone's Strait of Hormuz calculus is wrong. We need to go back to the drawing boards. That's it, that's the tweet. Now, a hypothetical thread with my personal thoughts. Background on the Hormuz crisis. You can skip this long section, but know this. This is all about ships, and the U.S. Navy giving them permission to pass. The Strait of Hormuz is 21 miles wide. 2 shipping channels, each 2 miles across, separated by a 2-mile buffer. The normal traffic separation scheme runs through Iranian territorial waters, past the islands of Keshem and Larak, where the IRGC has radar stations, missile batteries, and fast-attacked craft bases overlooking every transit. 20 million barrels of oil and petroleum products flow through this gap every day. 1/5 of global consumption. There is no alternative. Saudi Arabia's east-west pipeline to Yanbu and the UAE's pipeline to Fujairah can handle maybe 5 million barrels combined. The math doesn't work. The bottleneck is not political, it's geological and hydrographic. When those 7 P&I clubs belonging to the international group issued 72-hour cancellation notices for war risk coverage in the Persian Gulf, they didn't just raise costs, they made transit impossible. Here's why. P&I clubs insure roughly 90% of the world's ocean-going tonnage. Without their coverage, ships can't sail. Port authorities won't let them dock. Banks won't finance the cargo. Charterers won't book the vessel. The entire system, from loading berth to discharge terminal, is underwritten by a chain of contracts that begins with a club in London, Oslo, or Tokyo. When the clubs pulled war risk extensions on March 5, that chain broke. Not for a few ships, for the global fleet. War risk premiums jumped from 0.25% to 1% of hull value, renewable every 7 days. VLCC charter rates quadrupled to nearly $800,000 per day. Over 1,000 vessels are now trapped in the Persian Gulf, burning charter costs with nowhere to go. By March 3, only 4 ships crossed the strait, down from a 7-day average of 77. This is the part almost nobody in the media understands. Every TV analyst is talking about minesweepers and carrier strike groups. The binding constraint on Hormuz in the first week was not a minefield, it was a spreadsheet in London. Then Trump did something remarkable. He ordered the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation to create a $20 billion maritime reinsurance facility, with Chubb as lead underwriter, making the United States government the insurer of last resort for Gulf shipping. A sovereign nation has positioned itself as the backstop for war risk insurance on the world's most critical maritime choke point. The DFC facility, coordinated with CENTCOM and Treasury, offers hull, machinery, and cargo coverage on a rolling basis to eligible vessels. The United States now controls the on-off switch for the Strait of Hormuz, not through naval power, through insurance. But here's the tell. And Scott Bessent was asked about this, if this was planned, and he said, oh yes, this has been in the works for months. We've gone through a bunch of different we've done scenario analysis on a whole bunch of different possible iterations of how this could go. There is a plan. Here's the tell, says John Conrad. The DFC facility covers hull, machinery, and cargo. It does not cover P&I liability, pollution, crew injury, third-party claims. Moody's flagged this immediately. Without liability coverage, most ship owners still won't sail. The facility is deliberately incomplete. If the White House wanted the strait fully open tomorrow, it could expand the DFC facility to cover P&I liability with one directive. It hasn't. That gap is not an oversight, it's a strike price on an option the administration is choosing not to exercise yet. But now that insurance is mostly settled, the ships still aren't sailing. Why? That insurance isn't backed by the DFC, it's backed by a green light from the US Navy. A green light that hasn't appeared. Read the latest, Department of Maritime Administration? Read the latest Department of Maritime Administration Navy warning carefully. U.S. flagged, owned, or crewed commercial vessels that are operating in these areas should maintain a minimum standoff of 30 nautical miles from U.S. military vessels to reduce the risk of being mistaken as a threat. They can't pass without naval ships stepping aside to let them through. Naval ships themselves are preventing anyone from going through. What was clear from the DOE conversation, Europe is going to have to figure this out themselves. And the White House is not sprinting to help. I was hesitant to post this earlier today, but the latest Truth Social posts confirm some of my suspicions. So here goes. Trump, the person, if not the whole administration, cares deeply about restoring American maritime might. He came into office determined to restore American maritime power. He assembled the greatest collection of maritime minds in key government positions since Nixon. He put Mike Waltz, creator of the Ships for America Act, as head of his National Security Council. He created a maritime office in the White House. He appointed maritime advocates to key positions throughout his administration. He signed a sweeping maritime executive order in April of 2025 that directed a maritime action plan across defense, state transportation, and homeland security. He started laser focusing on securing choke points: Panama, the Red Sea, Suez, the Greenland-UK gap. He launched investigations into Gibraltar and Spain. He created U.S. trade representative actions to tariff Chinese-built and operated ships. He called CMA-CGM CEO Rodolphe Sade to the Oval Office and secured a $20 billion commitment. He invited me, the owner of the world's largest shipping news website, to the White House multiple times and got me a Pentagon press credential. The ambition was real. So was the pushback. Ship owners lined up outside USTR to protest the China shipping tariffs. Almost every economist on the planet lined up against the maritime tariff proposals. The entire U.S. tech sector asked for China concessions, and what did China want in return? A pause to USTR. Then Signalgate. Media leaked a private conversation about attacking the Houthis and reopening the Red Sea. The operation was stunned. Signalgate forced a reorganization. Waltz was moved to the UN. The maritime office was downsized. The NSC was gutted. That was the moment every maritime initiative began to stall. What collapsed? Panama did not follow through on free transits for U.S. ships. CMA-CGM's $20 billion commitment fell through. The company ordered vessels from China and India instead. Congress stalled on the Ships Act. The UK used Chagos Islands, including Diego Garcia, to Mauritius, used Chagos Islands, including Diego Garcia, to Mauritius to get a sweetheart trade deal, putting a critical naval base at risk. Key Navy appointees were slow-rolled or blocked in the Senate. Then it came to a head at the IMO HQ in London. In April of 2025, 63 countries voted to approve the Net Zero Framework, a global carbon pricing mechanism on every ship over 5,000 tons. What's that? A framework targeted at global shipping? Using carbon as a reason for applying a tax? What did Trump negotiators ask for? That Americans' tiny fleet of merchant ships be exempt. Europe refused, claiming American maritime interests are now irrelevant and we don't have the leverage or votes. The US walked out. In October, at the adoption vote, Trump called it a global green new scam tax on shipping. The State Department threatened sanctions against any country that voted yes. 57 countries voted to delay. The UN carbon tax on ships wasn't sunk entirely, but it was dead in the water. And I'll just note, what's interesting is he mentions up here how Mike Waltz was the creator of the Ships for America Act. He was at NSC until Signalgate, and then where did he get moved to? He got moved to the UN. And then there was the UN carbon tax on ships that the US State Department sunk. In my opinion, it was a Pyrrhic victory. We stopped the carbon tax but did not get exemptions for US ships, and the White House began losing the wider war with the City of London. First Greenland, then two bigger losses. On February 20, the Supreme Court dealt Trump his biggest blow. In a 6-3 ruling, SCOTUS held that IEEPA does not authorize the president to impose tariffs, invalidating the Liberation Day reciprocal tariffs and the China-Canada-Mexico trafficking tariffs. An estimated $160 billion in tariff revenue gone. Trump imposed 15% global tariffs under Section 122, but those are capped at 150 days and require congressional extension. His most powerful tariff tool was taken away by the courts. If you can't tariff your way to compliance, you need another form of leverage. This was a huge hit for MAGA. And there was an even bigger loss that didn't make headlines, but I'm told hit Trump personally. And it reveals how the military, academia, and think tank establishment, which gets significant funding and support from Europe, fights back. In December, Trump announced the Golden Fleet Initiative at Mar-a-Lago, a new class of Trump-class battleships, 30,000 to 40,000 tons, armed with hypersonic missiles, railguns, lasers, and nuclear cruise missiles. The USS Defiant. A ship he designed with the Secretary of Navy to hold choke points like Hormuz. 20 to 25 hulls, the most ambitious surface combatant program since World War II. Within 72 hours, the national security think tank world lined up to kill it. CSIS published a piece titled, "The Golden Fleet's Battleship Will Never Sail," estimating $9 billion per hull, predicting cancellation before the first ship hits water. The Foundation for Defensive Democracies called it a waste. Retired admirals said the Navy should buy small distributed platforms instead. Every defense analyst in Washington competed to be quoted saying it was impossible. The military-industrial establishment, with the help from allied think tanks and colleges, lined up to piss on the plans. The same establishment that can't build a frigate on time, that delivered the Constellation class years late before canceling it, that produced 3 Zumwalts instead of 30, that has presided over the smallest navy since World War I, lined up overnight to explain why America can't build big ships anymore. The same people who have no plan to close the destroyer gap that is right now undermining convoy escort operations in the Gulf. The think tanks didn't offer an alternative, they offered learned helplessness. And that helplessness is the context in which Hormuz is now playing out. And the tariff decision took away a huge source of revenue to fund it without Congress, which won't even vote on the Bipartisan Ships Act. Now connect the dots. Strike Iran and Europe either bends or goes dark in an energy crisis. The European shipping community and political establishment has spent the last year dismissing, undermining, and mocking every Trump maritime initiative. They scoffed at the USTR tariffs. They laughed at the Ships Act. They blocked the IMO exemptions. They refused to take American maritime policy seriously. Now their energy supply runs through an insurance facility controlled by Washington. Let their navies figure it out. Except everyone knows they can't. European naval forces are too small, too slow, and too poorly equipped for sustained convoy escort operations through a contested strait. While the MSM is busy spinning Europe's failure to participate as a vote against the war, the smart players all know they aren't sending warships because they can't. All the European navies combined couldn't send more than 3 ships at a time to defend the Red Sea, and an entire German task force sailed around Africa to avoid it. Eventually, Europe will have to capitulate to get the US Navy and the US insurance backstop to fully reopen the strait. And what does capitulate look like? The IMO carbon tax, Greenland, tariff concessions, the Ships Act, every maritime policy priority that Europe and China have been blocking for the past year. Why hasn't Trump mentioned this plan? Why hasn't anyone else in the administration? Because nearly every maritime advocate he appointed who has spoken out has been sidelined by the swamp. And he has a tweet here from several days ago where he was really bemoaning this. He has been ringing the alarm bells like this, like crazy. There's a historical precedent that sharpens this hypothesis. The last time the U.S. Navy escorted tankers through Hormuz was Operation Earnest Will during the Iran-Iraq tanker war in 1987 and 88. Foreign tankers that wanted U.S. Navy protection had to reflag into the U.S. registry. Kuwaiti supertankers flew the American flag to get American escorts. Trump has already said the Navy will escort ships through Hormuz if necessary. If the same reflagging requirement applies, every European and Asian tanker that wants a U.S. escort would need to fly the American flag. Think about what that means for the Ships Act, the Jones Act, the U.S. flag fleet, and CMA-CGM's unfulfilled promise to triple its U.S. flag vessels. Hormuz becomes the forcing function for everything Trump's maritime agenda couldn't achieve through legislation or diplomacy. Meanwhile, Iran is selectively letting ships through. Turkish, Indian, Chinese, and some Saudi tankers have been permitted to transit via Iranian territorial waters. About 18 tankers, mostly Chinese, have done so according to Lloyd's. Western allied ships are blocked. The closure is really a sorting mechanism. Iran decides who trades and who doesn't, unless the U.S. Navy reopens it for everyone, on America's terms. And here's background on the tanker war from Sal Mercoglianos. Now the domestic calculus. While TV oil analysts focus on the global price of oil, the real experts in Houston are watching something different: the fracturing of the global energy market. The real threat is not $200 oil. It's cheap energy in export nations and ruinous energy costs in places far from reserves. One global price only works if there's a surplus of tankers to arbitrage differentials. Before the Iran strikes, that surplus was razor thin. Now, with supertankers stuck in the Gulf, it's gone. Brent is at 106 today, WTI is under 100. But domestically, diesel is stabilizing and natural gas prices are falling as LNG that would normally be exported stays trapped at home. Today, Trump issued a 60-day Jones Act waiver and opened Venezuelan oil sales to U.S. companies via a new Treasury license for PDVSA. These are exactly the moves you'd make if you were trying to drive U.S. prices down while the global market fractures. Tankers charge by the day, so long-haul routes become comparatively more expensive. Venezuelan crude on short Gulf runs becomes far cheaper for U.S. refiners than Middle Eastern crude routed around the Cape of Good Hope for European or Asian buyers. Look at who benefits and who doesn't object. The 3 most powerful industry lobbies in the U.S. are tech, Wall Street, and energy. Tech gets cheaper LNG for data centers. You want to talk to me about the Zionist AIPAC lobby? You want to talk to me about the billions that go to Israel? I'm going to talk to you about tech, Wall Street, and energy. Obviously, those have an adjacent connection to it. But that's clearly not the most profitable focus. The 3 most powerful industry lobbies in the U.S. are tech, Wall Street, and energy. Tech gets cheaper LNG for data centers. Wall Street gets volatility and panic to extract trading profits. Oil and gas is usually protective of Hormuz because they trade internationally, but U.S. companies were just given Venezuela. BP was allowed back into the Gulf. Shell's favorite politician, Mark Rutte, is Trump's biggest fan in Europe. Meanwhile, California has been closing refineries and blocking pipelines, forcing gasoline imports from South Korea. Imports on ships with day rates that are skyrocketing. New England imports LNG and diesel by ship. If Hormuz stays closed, prices skyrocket in those states. Deep blue states. Gavin Newsom is leading the 2028 polls. He won't win if his constituents turn on him over gas prices his own refinery closure policies helped create. Red state energy costs fall, blue state costs rise. Europe capitulates on major policy disputes between now and the midterms. I want to be transparent. This political analysis is speculative. The relationship between energy prices and voting behavior has a lot of fragile links. But the directional logic is clear, and I bet the White House sees it. When I ran this hypothesis by a European maritime and naval expert I've trusted for years, he had just one question. Aren't Americans angry about the war? Turn on European news, open X, read MSM, and you'd think most Americans are irate. The truth? In my town in Massachusetts, where Trump protests happen constantly, I haven't seen one about Iran. Sitting in coffee shops, nobody's talking about it. I called over a dozen friends around the country last week. They all said the same thing. Americans don't care as much as European media thinks we do. Diesel is stabilizing. Gas isn't $10. Life goes on. But besides Trump's tweet, let's look at the evidence. Look what the Navy is doing, or rather not doing. The U.S. Navy is in no rush to solve this problem. They are methodically, deliberately taking their time. Army battalions are not mobilizing. The Marines called in from Japan are slow steaming across the Pacific. It could be weeks until they're ready. Minesweepers are still far from the battle space. Carriers are slowly rotating, not surging. They're working to reopen the strait, but do not appear to be in any hurry. Someone at the top told them to take their time. That signal has to be coming from the White House. And now you understand why. The longer the strait stays closed, the more the leverage builds. Every day, 1,000 trapped vessels burn charter costs. Every day, European energy dependence deepens. Every day, the DFC reinsurance facility becomes more central to the global shipping system. Every day, the case for concessions on tariffs, the IMO, Greenland, and the Ships Act becomes harder for Europe to refuse. And what does the Navy get for playing along? Support for battleships and stronger allies willing to spend money building their own destroyers when it becomes clear to the world how weak their navies have become. I want to be clear about what I'm arguing and what I'm not. I'm not arguing that Trump planned this from the beginning. The P&I Club withdrawal was a cascading system failure that no central planner could have predicted or orchestrated. What I'm arguing is that the administration has, whether by design or adaptation, assembled the tools to exploit this moment. You can see by some of these things, this is not some head in the sand, just relentless Trump advocate. I think he's too critical. The DFC facility is the option. The incomplete P&I coverage is the strike price. The Jones Act waiver and Venezuela sanctions easing are hedge positions. The Navy's deliberate pace is time decay working in Trump's favor. The strongest version of this thesis is not Trump is playing 4D chess, it's that the administration holds more options than anyone realizes, and the insurance mechanism, not the Navy, is the real lever of power. The man who launched the Ships Act, tariffed Chinese shipping, killed the IMO carbon tax vote, brought CMA CGM to the Oval Office, signed the most ambitious maritime executive order in decades, and then made the U.S. government the insurer of last resort for the world's most important shipping lane, does not lack a maritime strategy. Another version of this scenario is apathy. America just doesn't care about ships or how long it takes to reopen Hormuz or what happens to Europe as a result. This version might infuriate Americans, but it was American apathy over shipping that Europeans encouraged and exploited to corner the industry and keep control in London. If American maritime apathy is the cause for the Navy taking their sweet time, then isn't it Europe's fault for encouraging it? The biggest pushback on the Iran strikes among Democrats in the mainstream press is the question, what's the end game? He has one, but maybe he just can't say it out loud. Maybe he won't say, because the end game is leverage, and you don't announce leverage, you apply it. But please, go look at the evidence, go formulate your own hypothesis, test yours, test mine. This is an X thread about a hypothesis written by an American ship captain who supports Trump, not the ground truth. An American captain with an agenda, getting Europe to wake up to the growing importance of American maritime interests. And then he says, here's his long-form G-Captain editorial on the subject. That's his publication, the world's top visited maritime news website. And he says, here's the best book documenting how Europe leveraged America's maritime apathy the last 50 years. And it is The Abandoned Ocean, A History of United States Maritime Policy by Andrew Gibson and Arthur Donovan. Josh Ham, Patriot spotted. Catholic Hodel, another Patriot spotted. Says, I feel like this thread needs worldwide attention and a spaces discussion. This is world-class analysis. This screams you nailed it, but I'm half retarded. But this all reads dead on. I am just begging. You don't have to wholeheartedly believe and accept the analysis. You just have to recognize that it's there. You have to stop this. They don't know what they're doing. There was no plan. They're in over their heads. They're just desperately flailing. This has been the standard Trump derangement syndrome line from the moment he came down the golden escalator. And so many people who spent 10 years recognizing, identifying, calling it out, now that it suddenly hit their particular issue that they care about, suddenly they have a Trump derangement syndrome button. And they just forsake all rationality on the subject. Because there's also another element here. Orthonormalist. Thank you, Jeff Accordion. Appreciate the kicks. Please do support your streamer here. Send a tip at tips.kingpill.com. I am here on my day off because I thought this stuff was important enough to get to with you guys. And I will be going over to the King Pilled Discord voice chat after this. So tips.kingpill.com if you want to support the show. Kingpill.com. Excuse me. Kingpill.com if you would like to come hang out in the voice chat with me later on this evening. Orthonormalist said, I think people continue to drastically underestimate how much Trump cares about nukes. The reason he treats Russia the way he does is the reason he's treating Iran the way he does. It seems obvious to me. And now I am going to read to you from a couple of articles. This first one we'll get most of, and then the second one I think we'll read all of. This is the Washington Post. November 15, 1984. Donald Trump holding all the cards, the tower, the team, the money, the future. Written more than 41 years ago. Donald J. Trump is uneasy. He does not have a reservation for breakfast in the Plaza's Tony Edwardian room. But he'll get his table because, as Donald Trump will unabashedly tell you, he is one of the people who have it. He is the brassy 38-year-old developer who, with his wife Ivana, has built the hottest properties in New York, offering the most expensive apartments to the world's wealthiest. He is the master of grand plans, now hoping to build the greatest hotel in the world, along with the world's tallest building in New York City, and perhaps one day fulfill his fantasy of becoming the U.S. negotiator on nuclear arms limitation talks with the Soviets. That's right, 41 years ago. Trump dreamed, planned, worked at trying to become the official U.S. negotiator on nuclear arms limitations talks with the Soviets. And as owner of the United States Football League's New Jersey Generals, Trump rattled the Old Boy Sports Network last month by helping to engineer a $1.3 billion antitrust suit by the USFL against the National Football League, which alleges that the NFL has used monopolistic practices and conspired to control the, quote, business of Major League Football. To his detractors, Trump is classic nouveau riche, a media cultivator with an oversized ego. But to his admirers, he is a paragon of energetic brilliance and the catalyst who brought back city living. And so Donald Trump knows he can always get his table with the following statement. I'm Donald Trump. Trump Tower, Trump Plaza. Estimated net worth $400 million. Do you have a table available? Done. The one in the corner with a view of the park and Fifth Avenue. 3 waiters to a table. Words tumbling out as fast as quarters out of a slot machine. I know one man in particular, says Trump, in swift Queen's cadence, the kind that are usually lost after 4 years at Cornwall-on-the-Hudson and Wharton School of Business. He's one of the most successful men in New York, and he couldn't get a table at a restaurant. He's worth maybe $400 or $500 million, and he's standing at Le Cirque or one of them, and he couldn't get a table. So I see him standing there and he's a little embarrassed and he says, Don, could you help me get a table? So I got him a table. So he calls the next day and I said, no one knows you. You're very successful. And he says, no, I like to keep a low profile. That's great, but in the meantime, he can't get a table in a restaurant. The man calls me back a week later. He wants to know the name of my public relations firm, says Trump, who has no public relations firm. And I said to him, either you have it or you don't. If you can think of any amenity, any extravagance or nicety of life, any service we haven't mentioned, then it hasn't been invented yet. You could call his a story of riches to riches, the tale of the development of a personality that refuses to accept any of life's gifts to the privileged with equanimity. If it's not the impossible, Donald is simply not interested, one of his vice presidents has said. Trump started with the security of $40 million in family real estate assets that his father earned through building moderate income housing in Brooklyn and Queens, an estate that now is estimated at anywhere from $400 million to $1 billion. His buildings are not just opulent, but overwhelming. Trump Tower, the brassy, glassy condo commercial Fifth Avenue building next to Tiffany's, with its 200-foot waterfall flowing over Italian salmon marble. Retail shops that rent for $1 million a year. Charles Jourdan pays it, and 24 other of the world's finest merchants pay close to it. Asprey, Harry Winston, Cartier, and Buccellati. And the condos, for people with a certain style, he says. Johnny Carson is in for a $3.5 million unit. And Steven Spielberg, too. He counts Arab sheiks and the greatest industrialists of Europe among his residents. He is not just the owner of the New Jersey Generals, but also the force behind pushing the fledgling football league to a controversial fall schedule. Some of the other USFL owners think of him as more of a bully and a grandstander than a constructive force. Not a week goes by that he is not mentioned on the real estate, sports, or gossip pages. Young Donald, the New York Times columnist has called him. Boy builder, says the New York Daily News. I hate to do these things, he says as he settles in for an interview. I think my secretary told you that. He recently brought a $500 million libel suit against the Chicago Tribune and the paper's architecture critic, Paul Gapp, charging that the critic virtually torpedoed Trump's latest real estate idea, a plan for the world's tallest building. Yet still, you can have the greatest public relations firm in the world. If you're not a certain type, the papers aren't going to buy it, he says. What I have done is build the most beautiful buildings in the best locations, and I'm 38 and I like to live in a certain way. That whole combination leads up to something. The key to his psyche, says a friend, is not just a search for money, but an insatiable craving for recognition. Ergo, his name in bold letters on the buildings. No, it's not that, he says. In the low-key world of New York real estate, where getting publicity can be almost as damaging as being stuck with an empty building, Trump cultivates it. He is often described as a hustler, a fast-talking, fast-walking operator who always has an idea and a way to get it into the newspapers. This morning, Trump has a new idea. He wants to talk about the threat of nuclear war. He wants to talk about how the United States should negotiate with the Soviets. He wants to be the negotiator. He says he has never acted on his nuclear concern, but he says that his good friend Roy Cohn, the flamboyant Republican lawyer, has told him this interview is a perfect time to start. Some people have an ability to negotiate, he says. It's an art you're basically born with. You either have it or you don't.
Welcome to the Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you, Bobby Ballbags. And congratulations, Tooze McGee. Trust Plan Star says he does have gaudy style. At least he tries. I can't stand stale modernist architecture. And Homeless Nomad said, yeah, I don't begrudge him. It's just his style. But man, it's hard to look at. It was wild seeing Secret Service and riot gear with submachine guns standing outside of it. Pretty base, not going to lie. Yes, so true. He would know what to ask the Russians for, he says, but he would rather not tip his hand publicly. In the event that anything happens with respect to me, I wouldn't want to make my opinions public, he says. I'd rather keep those thoughts to myself or save them for whoever else is chosen. Thank you, Emperor Atreides. It's something that somebody should do that knows how to negotiate, and not the kind of representatives that I've seen in the past. He could learn about missiles quickly, he says. It would take an hour and a half to learn everything there is to learn about missiles. I think I know most of it anyway. You're talking about just getting updated on a situation. You know who really wants me to do this? Roy. I'd do it in a second. Despite his father's successes and extensive real estate holdings in Brooklyn and Queens, Trump's childhood was modest, with little sign of the kind of life $40 million could buy. The third of 4 children, Trump attended grade school in Queens and was then sent to Cornwall for high school. He finished his formal education at the Wharton School of Business at the University of Pennsylvania. My father was successful, but it was a different kind of success, he says. I didn't grow up like this. When I played golf, I played at the public course. I'd go to the state park and wait 4 hours to tee off when I was 14. After college, he systematically plotted his way into the real estate market with an instinctive feel for buying and selling and the security of his father's money. An apartment building here, a brownstone there. I bought brownstones for $125K that I'm getting offered $7 and $8 million for, he says. It's crazy. His big break came in 1975 when Trump essentially banked against the bankruptcy of New York. While builders and developers were filing out of the city in droves, Trump was just warming up. The area around the old Commodore Hotel on 42nd Street near Grand Central Station was at a low point. Both the hotel and the area, once vibrant attractions to the tourists, were deteriorating. The streets were cluttered with New York's lowlife, and merchants were leaving en masse. Trump bought the hotel and rebuilt a Hyatt hotel on the site. He took a chance on the city revitalizing itself, and his bet paid off. Trump's hotel is now overflowing. By now, the story behind the finessing of the Trump Tower deal is New York folklore. Again, Trump coupled just the right mix of moxie and serendipity to buy the precious plot of land next to Tiffany's. The land was owned by Equitable Life Assurance Company and leased by Genesco Inc., owners of Bonwit Teller. He negotiated to buy the 29-year lease from Genesco at a time when the company was cash poor, and he obtained the air rights from Tiffany's, which allowed him to build his 68 floors. And not least in his portfolio of transactions was the quiet gold deal. When gold went on the public market again in 1971, Trump hawked everything to buy huge quantities. When he sold it in 1982, a source close to the deal says he earned $73 million. It was a good investment, allows Trump, on the 3-block walk from the Plaza to Trump Tower. A lot easier than building buildings, I'll tell you that. His office on Trump Tower's 26th floor is remarkably low-key for a billion-dollar empire, with only a few secretaries and sales representatives in sight. The Trumps also live in a $12 million penthouse triplex there. It has 3 walls of windows and a staggering view of the city. There are no signs of their 3 children around the downstairs living area. No toys, no clutter. The floors are warm beige onyx. A gold leaf couch and black silk walls. And a pink onyx bathroom with more floor-to-ceiling windows and large circular tub. Have you ever seen a stone glow like that? He asks. Ivana, Trump calls from the doorway of her office. Don't you look terrific today? Ivana Trump, 34, fits neatly into Donald's theory on life. Either you have it or you don't. She is one of those who have it. The date of publishing for this was 1984. Tall, thin, blonde, and glacial. She was on the 1972 Czechoslovakian Olympic ski team, works 10-hour days for her husband, and raises their children. Designers and promoters have often asked her to endorse their products publicly. She has no interest. She is vice president of the Trump Organization, the decorator of his buildings and the lobbies, and designer of the cheerleaders' uniforms for his football
Welcome
team.
to the Gulag.
Striking.
If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you for the gifted sub, Emperor Atreides. A porcelain face and flaxen hair that always looks just sprayed and coiffed. Winter skiing in Gstaad and weekends in Greenwich. She found the Connecticut retreat herself by chartering a helicopter and cruising up and down the Atlantic coast. Price tag? $4 million. Her office is a few feet from his, and from there she decorates their projects. Like the 600 rooms at the Atlantic City Casino, Harrah's Trump Plaza, where she had the steely patience to make every one a different color. I didn't think there were that many color schemes, she says. I even had to go into the grays, and I hate gray. She is formal and uneasy during the interview, asking the reporter to turn off the tape recorder because she does not wish her accent recorded. It embarrasses me, she says.
Welcome to the Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Dave Johnson! With the 10 gifted subs!
You know, Dave Johnson is the gayest person to ever walk this green earth.
Here is the biggest, gayest man in the world.
Wow. So gay. So gay.
Those all look like they are default names. So, if those are actually attached to people, then congratulations to you. Thank you, Dave. You are a patriot, sir. Appreciate you. Dave is now on the list. Go away, OBS. Remind me later. Another update. Good grief. A former model living in Montreal, she met Trump at a party in New York while she was in town promoting the 1976 Summer Olympics. Was it love at first sight, she is asked. I don't want to answer that. I'm a very private person, she says. She relents. I don't know about this love at first sight. We were married 3/4 of a year after we met, which is good. Some people go on and on and on. They're never sure. Well, no one is ever really sure. He was smart, she says. I like smart men. Women, they have to be nice looking, but men, they must be smart. She is also uncomfortable talking about the children and becomes abrupt when she is asked if they too ski. Yes, she says flatly. There are 2 boys and a girl, all under 7. She has an easy smile, red lips parting over Pepsodent teeth. The navy and oyster blouse is loose and silky, the bow large and floppy, soft against her shoulder. She looks as if she has lived in Trump Tower her whole life. Let's face it, she says about the conspicuous opulence of their buildings. People want excitement. They don't want that little black dress anymore. Donald Trump has genius real estate instincts, says Irving Fisher, chairman of HRH Construction and Trump's main builder. And he's a beyond belief negotiator. When he gets through, you really think he's doing you a favor by letting you do the job. When it comes to the fee, I always know I'm going to lose the negotiations. He understands what he has to do to get where he wants to go, says Benjamin Holloway, chairman of the Equitable Real Estate Group, Inc., which has financed some of Trump's projects, including Trump Tower. He is an incredible self-promoter, says Philip Hess, counsel to the chairman of City Planning, New York. He talks. He makes you feel like he's making you part of the greatest deal mankind has ever had the privilege to develop, and if you don't jump in with him, there's a line waiting to. We have a healthy sense of reserve when we approach Donald. When people criticize Donald Trump, 4 issues are generally raised. His ordering the destruction of 2 Art Deco bas-reliefs on the facade of Bonwit Teller, which the Metropolitan Museum of Art wanted. His actions concerning tenants at one of his recently purchased buildings on Central Park South. His handling of his co-chairmanship of the New York Vietnam Memorial Commission, and how his presence has affected the USFL. I'm getting bored reading about those bas-reliefs, he says when asked about it. The fact is that no one wanted to do anything to get them down, and it was very dangerous business. My insurance company said I would have to close Fifth Avenue. All of a sudden, the day they came down, they became martyrs. The Metropolitan Museum of Art would not comment on the flap. Earlier this year, New York Times columnist Sidney Schanberg wrote that Trump was trying to force rent-controlled tenants out of the Central Park South building by offering the city the empty apartments to house vagrants. He denies that he was trying to force people out. People find that very interesting somehow, says Trump. I have a bunch of empty apartments and there are people right outside sleeping on the street. It was a sincere offer to the city. Trump says he has petitioned to demolish the building and replace it with a deluxe hotel. Trump's lawyer on this matter, Lawrence Bernfeld, says Trump is working through legal and proper channels to demolish the building and that tenants are using delaying tactics. I have a building with mostly well-connected millionaires paying $400 a month, says Trump. It's a disgrace. John Moore, chairman of the building's tenant association, maintains that not more than 5 millionaires live in the building, out of about 60 rented units. He says that many of the tenants are people with average or limited income, including 15 women over 60 living alone, as well as one 99-year-old woman who lives with a nurse. The rest are upper middle class, Moore says. Moore says the remaining tenants do not want to move out. It is our unequivocal judgment that Donald Trump does not have a chance to get that building demolished, says Herman Badillo, the attorney who represents the tenant association. We will be opposing it strongly in the next few years. The situation is currently in a web of legal suits and countersuits between Trump and the tenants. So he can't lease out the unoccupied rooms to the government to use for vagrants who are on the street, but also he can't tear the thing down and put it in a deluxe hotel. One official of the Vietnam Commission who has attended all the meetings maintains Trump has been to only 2 or 3 out of 20 meetings. This was confirmed by another member of the commission. The first time he attended a meeting was to launch the commission, one source says, and the second was when he arrived with a reporter who was profiling him. To this charge, Trump responds, "That's interesting. I'll resign then. They're very small thinkers. They're stockbrokers that were in Vietnam and they don't have it." He also said he was never asked to be a working member of the commission, but simply to lend his name. Scott Higgins, co-chairman of the commission, said he had no comment on Trump's remarks at first, then called back with the following statement. He's been a real friend of New York Vietnam veterans. He donated his time, his money, and even the Trump Tower for our major fundraising event, and we're counting on him to do even more in the future. In every single one of these stories, he is the one who holds the frame. Everyone else will bend to his will. They're like, hey, put your name on this commission so it'll be good for us. And he's like, all right. But he's not going to go show up to these meetings. He's got stuff to do. He's working. And then they're like, they leak this thing about him. Oh, he's not showing up. He's not coming. And he's like, all right, I'll just resign then. And they're like, actually, sorry, we really like you. Please don't leave. Trump has annoyed some of the owners in the USFL by buying into the league a season after its birth and immediately raising the stakes by paying high dollars for such players as Brian Sipe, formerly the quarterback for the Cleveland Browns. He also signed up the Giants linebacker Lawrence Taylor, but when the Giants subsequently offered Taylor a large raise, Trump sold back his contract with Taylor for $750,000. Trump also pushed for the USFL team owners vote last August that allowed the USFL to go head-to-head with the NFL in a fall season in 1986. This creates stadium problems for many of the teams, and one of the voters fears it could very well cause some of them to go out of business. That voter, who asked for anonymity, said that some fear that as a result of the USFL action, the NFL may in the long run absorb as many as 6 of the USFL's strongest franchises. We had an understanding that said, let's keep this league reasonably competitive, said this owner. That was a joke. To him, you win. You crunch anyone that comes along. Trump says he is only trying to strengthen the USFL. I can't help Donald Trump unless I help the league. Earlier this year, Miles Tannenbaum, owner of the USFL champions, the Philadelphia Stars, said of Trump, last year we had in our ownership a bunch of gentlemen. This year you have people who weren't there and who didn't care about following a basic format on how the league was formed. Tannenbaum is a guy who has very little vision or imagination, says Trump. Says Tannenbaum in response, look to the source. God, I love this man. After a tour of Trump Tower, Trump goes in his limousine to Deerdale Country Club in Great Neck, where he will play golf. Trump seems relaxed for the first time all morning, taking calls on his car phone and talking nonstop about the threat of nuclear war again, growing up and his self-perceptions. He is surprisingly thin-skinned about the press. He gets angry, he says, when the media try to paint him as nouveau riche because of his grand building notions and conspicuous lifestyle, and mentions in particular a piece published by Gentleman's Quarterly, which his office sends along as background material on Trump in any case. He says he has never thought of himself as nouveau riche. Thank you, Emperor Atreides. I don't think so, he says. I like it, but I don't need it. I like it, and I feel I should have it, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to not have it. When people see Trump Tower, I'm not sure it would be appropriate for me to hop in a 1953 Chevy and drive away. If you walked up and saw a horrible apartment with a 7-foot ceiling and shag carpeting or something, you'd say, this is unbelievable. So I don't know. I don't do it because I need it. I do it for other reasons. Why? Because it's there. I do it maybe because it's somewhat expected. And then, listen, life is so long and you have a little time to play the game. And by the way, not everybody can have this attitude. Now, for more. Donald Trump angled for Soviet posting in 1980s, says Nobel Prize winner. In 1986, the future president met with one of the few Americans who knew Mikhail Gorbachev, seeking information about the USSR's new leader and revealing plans to ask Ronald Reagan to post him to Moscow. That's correct. May 26, 2017. Donald Trump, in the mid-1980s, aggressively pursued an official government post to the USSR, according to a Nobel Peace Prize winner with whom Trump interacted at the time. He already had Russia mania in 1986, 31 years ago, asserts Bernard Lown, a Boston-area cardiologist known for inventing the defibrillator and sharing the 1985 Nobel Peace Prize with a top Soviet physician in recognition of their efforts to promote denuclearization. Lown, now 95 and retired in Newton, Massachusetts, tells The Hollywood Reporter that Trump sought and secured a message with him in 1986 to solicit information about Mikhail Gorbachev. It's probably Loan, actually. Gorbachev had become the USSR's head of state and met with Loan the year before. During this meeting, Lowen says, the fast-rising businessman disclosed that he would be reaching out to then-President Ronald Reagan to try to secure an official post to the USSR in order to negotiate a nuclear disarmament deal on behalf of the United States, a job for which Trump felt he was the only one fit. He said to me, "I hear you met with Gorbachev and you had a long interview with him and you're a doctor, so you have a good assessment of who he is," Lowen recalls. So I asked, "Why would you want to know?" And he responded, "I intend to call my good friend Ronnie," meaning Reagan, "to make me a plenipotentiary ambassador for the United States with Gorbachev." Those are the words he used. And he said he would go to Moscow and he'd sit down with Gorbachev, and then he took his thumb and he hit the desk and he said, and within 1 hour the Cold War would be over. I sat there dumbfounded. Who is this self-inflated individual? Is he sane or what? The White House did not respond to a request for comment.
Welcome to the Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you for the gifted sub, Nevsky. Lithuania-born Lowen, who today is professor of cardiology emeritus at the Harvard School of Public Health, had been the subject of considerable media attention shortly before he first heard the name Trump. In October of 1985, he and Yevgeny I. Chasov, the personal physician of the Kremlin senior leadership, including Gorbachev, were chosen to share the Nobel Peace Prize on behalf of International Physicians for the Prevention of Nuclear War, a group they co-founded in 1980 that had grown to include more than 150,000 members in 49 countries. And in December of 1985, shortly after collecting their Nobel medals in Oslo, Lowen joined Chasov for a meeting at the Kremlin with Gorbachev, who unexpectedly had come into power that March, making Lowen one of the first Westerners to spend time with him. It wasn't long after Lowen returned to the United States that he learned about Trump. I get a call from New York, and it was a Wall Street broker who was a friend of Trump's, Lowen recalls, declining to name the individual. He says, "Trump would like to see you." And I said, "Who is Trump?" I had no idea. He continues, "This fellow was a member of the board of the Lowen Cardiovascular Research Foundation, this Wall Street fellow, and he knew that we were short on funds for the research that I outlined, and that we had to do in the following few years. He says, here's somebody who might be a source of funding. Why don't you meet him? He wants to talk to you. He asked me to arrange it." So I came into New York and went to Trump Tower and met him for lunch. Lowen says it quickly became apparent that Trump had an agenda of his own. "I was sitting there in this glass bubble overlooking New York and feeling, what am I doing here?" he recalls. He seemed totally disjointed. I talked to Trump extensively about my experience with Gorbachev, Lowen recalls. I talked for about 20 minutes or so about how I thought Gorbachev behaved, blah, blah, and he sat there sort of listening. He was fidgeting, and I realized he had a short attention span. Lowen emphasizes that the whole situation felt strange. "I thought there was another agenda perhaps, but I didn't know what that was," he says. "I was not sure about his motivation for why he was doing it. But it puts together sort of a continuum that began way back in '86 with his fixation on Russia, the Soviet Union then." Trump and Lowen never spoke again. Though the lengths to which Trump went to learn about Gorbachev and to secure an official post from the Americans never have been revealed, Trump's interest in making a deal with the Soviets was widely reported and mocked at the time. In an April 8, 1984 profile in the New York Times, Trump revealed that concern about a nuclear holocaust had plagued him, since his uncle, the groundbreaking nuclear physicist Dr. John Trump, first spoke to him about it 15 years earlier, so 1969. "His greatest dream is to personally do something about the problem," wrote the Times' William E. Geist, NBC anchor Willie Geist's father. And characteristically, Donald Trump thinks he has an answer to nuclear armament. Let him negotiate arms agreements. He who can talk people into selling $100 million properties to him for $13 million. Geist continued somewhat snarkily. "The idea that he would ever be allowed to go into a room alone and negotiate for the United States, let alone be successful in disarming the world, seems the naive musing of an optimistic, deluded young man who has never lost at anything he has tried. But he believes that through years of making his views known and through supporting candidates who share his views, it could happen someday." 1984. In 1984, Donald Trump wanted to be the man who solves the problem of mutually assured destruction and the fear of nuclear holocaust. For over half his life, he has been focused on this issue. And it has nothing to do with fucking Israel. It has to do with Nikola Tesla. Trump expounded on these ambitions in a November 15, 1984 Washington Post profile at the urging, he said, of his mentor and lawyer Roy Cohn, who was best known as Joseph McCarthy's chief counsel during the Army McCarthy hearings. The Post's Lois Romano asked Trump for specifics about how he would approach a U.S.-Soviet deal and recounted how he demurred, using terms familiar to those who followed the 2016 presidential campaign. I wouldn't want to make my opinions public, he says. I'd rather keep those thoughts to myself or save them for whoever else is chosen. It's something that somebody should do that knows how to negotiate, and not the kind of representatives that I've seen in the past. He could learn about missiles quickly, he says. It would take an hour and a half to learn everything there is to learn about missiles. I think I know most of it anyway. You're talking about just getting updated on a situation. The most consistent motherfucker you have ever seen. He is a simple man. He hasn't changed. He is exactly the same today as he was then. He's just older and wiser and more sobered and much more aware of his own mortality. In Ron Rosenbaum's November 1985 profile of Trump in Manhattan Inc. magazine, later republished as part of a 1987 book, Manhattan Passions, True Tales of Power, Wealth, and Excess, Trump discussed his obsession with brokering this ultimate deal, stating, "Nothing matters as much to me now." He coyly suggested that he already was dealing at a very high level on this, hinting at connections in Washington and at the White House.
Welcome to the Gulag. If you survive, you earn your freedom.
Thank you, Borp. And he hinted that negotiators like him were needed. There's a vast difference between somebody who's been consistently successful and somebody who's been working for a relatively small amount of money in governmental service for many years, in many cases because the private sector, who have seen these people indirectly, didn't choose to hire these people, any of them, because it didn't find them to be particularly capable. In other words, government employees are retards. And the standard diplomatic channels are gay. I just want to stop the world from killing itself. This is his, motivating philosophy for his entire life. Leveraging his ability to make deals to stop the world from killing itself and to make America great again. Everything else is subservient to that. And he has been 100% consistent on this for his entire life. Thank you, Nevsky. By December 1985, Trump's infatuation with negotiating a deal between the Americans and the Soviets was so widely known that the New York Times' George Vesey proclaimed, "People used to titter when Donald Trump said he wanted to broker a nuclear arms reduction. If the United States gave Donald Trump an official title and let him loose on the arms race, he might lay off on his threat to darken the western sky of Manhattan with his personal Brazilian North. Make peace, not skyscrapers. That's the general idea." He's holding him hostage with his garish skyscrapers. Homeless Nomad says, have you considered that being consistent in your beliefs across your entire life is actually Jewish?
I've got bad news for you. You're Jewish.
It wasn't long after the Trump loan meeting in 1986 that Trump made his first trip to the Soviet Union. In July of 1987, he traveled to Moscow and met with Gorbachev. The ostensible subject of their meeting was the possible development of luxury hotels in the Soviet Union by Mr. Trump, the New York Times wrote at the time. But Mr. Trump's calls for nuclear disarmament were also well known to the Russians. Trump told Playboy 3 years later, quote, "Generally, these guys are much tougher and smarter than our representatives." In the fall of 1987, Trump, a registered Republican who had made large contributions to Democrats as well, hinted that he might make a run for the presidency in 1988. But for which party, it wasn't clear. That September 2, he took out a full-page advertisement in 3 major newspapers, criticizing the Reagan administration's foreign policy under the headline, "There's nothing wrong with America's foreign defense policy that a little backbone can't cure." Asked why he had done so, his spokesperson said, "There is absolutely no plan to run for mayor, governor, or United States senator. He will not comment about the presidency." A month later, though, he did. "I'm not running for anything," he told the New York Times while adding, "I believe that if I did run for president, I'd win." Trump went on to give a series of political speeches that fall, some of which, according to the Times, touched on, quote, speeding up nuclear disarmament negotiations with the Soviet Union. In December of 1987, Gorbachev made his historic 3-day trip to the U.S. for a summit with Reagan that included a White House state dinner. There, in a receiving line, was Trump, whom Gorbachev had met in Moscow just 5 months earlier. Trump subsequently recounted their conversation to the Washington Post. Quote, "They want to have a great hotel, and they want me to be the one to do it." Thank you, Nevsky. Trump didn't run for president in 1988. A Trump hotel never was built in the Soviet Union, which collapsed in 1991. But Trump's interactions with Russia were only just beginning. So now, when you hear him talking about how Iran can never have a nuke, when he focuses on this issue of the nukes, thank you, Emperor Atreides, you know that there is a long, long history behind this. He talked about a nuclear non-proliferation treaty with Russia and China within like a week after being inaugurated. This most recent time. One of the first things he did was talk about nuclear non-proliferation. This has been a motivating goal of his for decades, almost half a century. Night, Jeff Accordion. And so that's one thread here, is the nuke matter. And then the other is the thread that I read you with John Conrad. NATO, the European so-called allies, and the attempt by the City of London to relocate to the Strait of Hormuz. Those things are adjacent to the Zionist question. The Zionist question plays a role in all of those things, but it is not the one single story. And if you are focused on the one single story, you're cramming everything into this super narrow frame, you're not seeing the world correctly. Homeless Nomad says, and they're connected. Once Iran has a nuke, you can't get Hormuz out from under them. Bingo. Because remember, Iran getting a nuke is not Iran having a nuke. Who has been financing the IRGC and the Iranian regime, maintaining them in place? How much is the Ayatollah worth? Where is all of the Khamenei wealth located? That's who has been controlling Iran and using it as the location for the transplantation of the City of London. And this man right here is standing in the way.
Me out to the ball game, take me out to the crowd, buy me some peanuts and cracker jacks. I don't care if I never come back. It's root for the home team. If they don't win, it's a shame. Or it's 1, 2, 3 strikes, you're out at the old ball game.
Shout out to Myth Omega, Trump singing. That's something you don't see every day. There's a reason why he is the God Emperor. There's a reason why he brings Andrea Bocelli to him. Slutty Milk says, chop him singing that part up with footage of bombs hitting Iran stuff. That'd be so good. We finally found a weakness in our president. Alrighty, well, I am going to wrap it up there. 2 hours. I figured it'd be about 2 hours. So hopefully this day off lab was a good one. Superior B says this is going to be a great episode to share with people. Yes, go share this one with people. It should be short and consumable enough. It should be meaty enough that I think as of right now, this is the best frame through which to view what is happening in Iran. You can get into, there's all stuff about like fertilizer and other minerals. There's the agricultural impacts of all of this. Go look at the executive orders and the actions that he has taken since he was inaugurated regarding critical minerals. The inputs like nitrogen and urea and potash and all of those things. Just go do a little search. Let the clanker work for you. say, Dear Mr. Grok, please tell me about these things. And go click all the links and read through them. And then tell me, then I dare you to come back to me and tell me that there isn't clearly a plan behind all of this. All right, I will see you guys, those of you who are in the King Pill Discord, kingpilled.com, if you're not. I will see you guys here in probably about 10 or 15 minutes. I'll jump in there and be hanging out for the next few hours for anyone who wants to come chat. And I will see you guys tomorrow for a normal episode of The Labe. For now, I leave you with Hulk.
When they took a shot at my hero, and they tried to kill the next president of the United States, enough was enough, and I said,